You're listening to Brandon Sports Talk, interviewing professional athletes and Paralympians and Olympians. And now for your professional athlete interview and your host, Brandon P.
Recording in progress. Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the U.S. Paralympian swimmer, Letticia Martinez. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
I'm doing wonderful. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started into professional swimming?
I guess I kind of always had it in the back of my mind, subconsciously, even though I didn't quite always know that. But when I look back to, I think it was kindergarten, teacher had us do a questionnaire about what we wanted to do when we were older. And I put on there that I wanted to be an Olympian. And then I had the privilege to do as many different sports and activities that my parents could put me in when I was little, considering I was blind. So I was limited, but I was very athletic and loved watching the Olympics when they would come on. And when I finally figured out that I could join a sport like swimming that was, I didn't necessarily have to see to do it. So once I found that and I realized that I could actually compete, and I did the Paralympics for a while. And once I figured out what the Paralympics was, I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually do this and make my dream come true. And as opposed to just having my dream of trying to beat as many able-bodied swimmers as I could at high school swim meets. So, yeah.
What was that like, obviously, getting started in the sport of swimming at such a young age of 14?
So actually, most swimmers start a lot younger. They usually start like 5 or 6. So I was a little late to the rodeo. So it was a little bit stressful, especially since I was never in any other real organized sport. I was in 8th grade track for a little bit, but we all know how middle school sports are. They're like 2 months long. So other than that, and then I did one sprint triathlon, and that's kind of what showed me about swimming and how much I really enjoyed it. And because I was in swim classes when I was younger to make sure I knew how to swim so I wouldn't drown or anything. But once I did that sprint triathlon, then I was really introduced to swimming and how fun and exciting it was. So once I started at high school, it was a little stressful because, like I said, I was late and it was my first real organized sport and I didn't know what I was doing, and I had to compete against a bunch of able-bodied swimmers who were obviously way faster than me and had been swimming for way longer than me. So it was very intimidating at first, but I loved the challenge and I loved being a part of a team, and I loved my coach. She was really inclusive and really helped me out, and I really enjoyed, especially my freshman year of swim at my high school. It was my favorite year.
What was that like going to New Mexico State, and how was that like competing and swimming while as a student at New Mexico State?
So it was hard because being blind, it does take me a little bit longer to do my academics, just because what takes you maybe 20 minutes or an hour, say it takes you an hour to do or to read, it would probably take me about 2.5, 3 hours. So it was, as any other college person who is doing athletics, it is challenging and learning how to balance time management and all of those things. But I did only go to New Mexico State for probably about 2 years. But I did really enjoy, I really enjoyed the structure of it. I really liked having, okay, I do this at this time, and I study from this time to this time, and I swim at this time. And it really helped me just kind of get ready for the grind of what swimming really is, especially when you're training at such a high level, because being in high school and training for the Paralympics is one thing, but being in college and doing it is a completely other ball game. So I feel like it helped give me a little bit more edge and a little bit more determination, and help me lean into those skills a little bit more than if I was just an athlete, just focusing on one thing. But I did enjoy it, and I ended up switching from New Mexico State to DeVry University, and that is where I ended up graduating from.
What was that like when you made the Paralympic team for Team USA?
Well, it was a bunch of emotions all at once. Really just an explosion of emotions of because 2012 was my first team and I had just started swimming in 2009. So I was still really new to the sport of swimming. People thought, like, there's no way you're gonna make that team. You've only been swimming for 3 years. You're really young. You have a lot of work to do. So it was very nerve-wracking in that sense, and it was also very exciting because I had finally found something that I just was like in my DNA, almost in my bones, and I really loved it. But it was a lot of emotions. It was excitement and nerve-wracking and anxiety of, oh, what if I don't make the team? And once they said my name, it was just like an adrenaline rush and joy and happiness and euphoria all mixed into one. And I was very, very blessed, and I had amazing teammates on my 2012 team, and it was a dream come true.
How was it like competing in the World Championship in 2013 and 15?
I really enjoyed it. 2013, I believe I had just started at my first semester of college, and I was not happy with my performance in 2012. And I had really, I don't want to say ramped up training, because I always trained really hard as I could. I did whatever my coaches told me and more. So I don't want to say that, but I had a lot more like, I knew what it was like to not do the way that you wanted. So I was using that as fuel for training for the next year. And so for 2013. And so I was really excited for that one. And they even had some events at that World Championships that they don't normally offer for the S11 blind category. So I was really excited about that. Like, I got to compete in butterfly, and butterfly was one of my more favorite events. But since it wasn't a Paralympic event, I hardly ever really got to train it as much. So that was really cool to have that opportunity and just to be competing at such a high level. It's I don't know how to explain it. It's just, you kind of get addicted to it in a way, because it's such an adrenaline rush and it's so awesome. And traveling the world, I love to travel and trying different foods and hearing accents and meeting other people, and it's just so much fun. And then in 2015, I really liked Scotland. That was one of my favorite meets, and I got a concussion that year during one of my, I think it was the 100 freestyle. So that one was a kind of a crazy swim meet, because I still ended up competing, but I was definitely very concussed. So it was still fun though. I still enjoyed it. Again, I didn't do too bad. I think at those swim meets, I think the highest place I got was 4th. So it was definitely right there on the cusp, but also like, oh my gosh, that's so close on the cusp. So, but I really enjoyed them both. They both had their perks to it. And in 2015, I was definitely older and had at least 6 years of swimming under my belt. So it was a little bit more enjoyable in that sense. I wasn't as much of a newbie.
How's it like competing in your first Paralympic Games and going to London in 2012?
It was crazy. It was beautiful. It was messy. It was all of the things. I loved that trip so much. We got to do some awesome bonding as a team. We got to go to Germany before for 2 weeks, and we had a sponsor from that place in Stuttgart, and they got to do certain things with us, and they had to go through this whole security process and all of those things. And my sponsor that I had, Beth, she was awesome. And I just loved getting to really have that bonding before we actually compete. Because for, other than the World Championships and Can-Am meets, the times that I had with my teammates, it was usually just competition mode. So you're swimming, you're racing, you're eating, you're napping, and you're not really doing anything else. And for that lead up trip, the preparation trip in Stuttgart in 2012, we still obviously were doing those things, but we got to get excited as a team together and the build up together and watch each other kill it in practice and oh man, you're going to do so good in 2 weeks. And we got to taper together. And so I really enjoyed that part. And then just the crowd in London was amazing, loud, awesome. They loved to cheer, and it was just crazy hearing the sounds. I always think of even diving into the pool sounded different. Like it just sounded like a fancy pool. I don't know how to explain it. And it just, the water felt crisper, cleaner or something. And everything about it just felt like, oh my gosh, this is special. This is pristine. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, trying to soak it all in, and only being 17 and only had been swimming for 3 years. And so it was also filled with a lot of anxiety and nerves. I didn't quite understand the mental aspect of it yet, so I was a lot more headspace. My headspace wasn't the best, so I did spend a lot of time in ways that I wish I could do over. Spent more time worrying as opposed to enjoying, but I still did enjoy it, and getting to bring back German chocolate was also one of my favorite things. And yeah.
With having the 2012 Paralympics, how did that help you and to prepare for the 2016 Rio Paralympics?
I knew what to expect. I knew how the process was. I knew what I had to do to get to that level again, to compete again. I knew how things could change. They could look one way leading up for 4 years, or even the year before, or even 6 months before. But then once you get to the Paralympics, it's different. People's times just change. Swimmers come out of nowhere. It's just a surprise. It's just a free for all of wonderfulness. Every athlete is at their top of their game, and they're going to show you and you know which team can cheer for their team the loudest. And so I was really able to enjoy it a little bit more, I think, in 2016, because I already knew what to expect. I already knew that my mind was a little bit of my problem, so I got to work on that a little bit more. I got to work on my technique a little bit more, because by 2016 I had already been swimming for 7 years at that point. So I just felt more comfortable in that way, and I had gone through a few coaches and tried different training strategies, so that was nice. I got to actually lift weight for 2016, whereas in 2012 I wasn't lifting weights yet. I was just doing like band work and stuff like that. So I definitely felt more strong and more ready in that sense, because I got to do some more strengthening exercises and really toning up and preparing for my events. And so yeah, I feel like in 2016 it was just a little bit more of okay, I can appreciate this. I don't have to worry as much. But it was definitely a different experience, because it was a third world country versus London. So in that sense, it was different as well.
How's that feeling like when you received your Team USA gear and you had the Argonaut symbols on your gear?
That is just, I don't know, I can't even really explain it. It's such a special moment, especially in 2016. So in 2012, we were just kind of in a big warehouse room, just a bunch of girls just getting naked and trying on clothes. And if they didn't have your size, oh well, you just picked the closest size. So in 2012, we didn't have as much of a choice for sizes and things. And some of the gear I think we didn't get because we were one of the last teams, I believe. So in 2016, it was a lot different, because we had our own dressing room and it had our name on it. And we would try it on, and the seamstresses would come by, and if the pants were too long, they would fix them for you, and then they would arrive at your dorm room in Rio. And so that one was so much fun. It just felt like a superstar, just, trying on clothes, and, oh, that looks good on you, or, oh, okay, we can do it here and it'll fit much better. And yeah, all those clothes I just hold very, very dear to my heart. And I have a daughter, so I'm excited for her to maybe get to wear them one day.
How's that feeling like, obviously having your name on that door and knowing that your hard work paid off and you got to experience that moment?
It is awesome. I sometimes use it as a reminder to myself when I'm going through hard times, because training for the Paralympics it's very difficult, and not a lot of people get to wear their name on their cap or get to have their name on a door and get all those free clothes, and it is very much a privilege and a blessing and God's favor for sure. So it was awesome because I went through a lot to get to that point. So it was rewarding and almost like, I don't want this to end, and, very sad when it does end. Like the post-Paralympic blues, as they say, it's definitely kind of an adrenaline rush the whole time you're there, and then you get home and you're like, ooh, normal life kind of sucks.
How is that like competing against teams like Canada, Brazil, and Mexico?
So my competition was more so other countries. I would say they all felt the same regardless, just knowing that there's somebody faster than you from a different country. And since I can't see, I don't know what they look like. Most of them I couldn't talk to because they didn't speak English. So it was kind of a little bit intimidating because we're all just in a ready room before we swim and not really talking to each other because we don't really know where each other is, and most of us don't speak the same language. And some people like to talk before they race, and I like to listen to music and get my RBF face on. But it was a privilege to be able to race against the world's fastest, whichever country they came from, and it was cool knowing that I got the opportunity to do that.
What were some of your songs that you listened to before you prepared for the race?
Usually very like rap, hip hop, Eminem, maybe a little bit of like angry stuff, definitely some like rap with some heavy bass stuff. That's usually what I would listen to. I tried other genres, but I feel like those are the ones that got me like pumped up and I felt the most like ready to go.
After your Paralympics at Rio, what was your training like preparing for your next Paralympics?
That one was crazy because I had a hip injury leading up to Rio, but I just kind of ignored it and got some Band-Aid like treatments, kind of like just rolling out and icing and dry needling, and just kind of just keep going, honestly. So after Rio in 2017, I had hip surgery. I had a torn labrum, and by the time I got my surgery, I couldn't walk. So that recovery was pretty brutal. Blind person on crutches. Since it was such a severe injury, it did take me a lot longer to recover. And then so that was a little bump in the road, but it was also a time for me to reflect and kind of listen to my body more, do certain things that I used to do before, and kind of just listen to my body more because, I knew something was wrong for a long time. Well, for some time, I just kind of ignored it. And then I did try to get the treatment, but I wasn't able to get the answers that I needed and the tests done that I needed to get done. So it's just kind of one of those things that, looking back, when you have pain, you got to learn what kind of pain to ignore and what kind of pain that you need to look into. So there can be other problems. And since I had that hip torn labrum for so long, and all the compensating that I was doing, it caused other injuries as well and a longer recovery. So it's just one of those things where you got to really listen to your body, especially as a blind person and as an athlete, because there are so many different things that can happen. And then I ended up healing from that. I had Dr. Philip on at the Stedman Clinic in Vail, and he is amazing, the best. Love him, love his team. They are amazing, wonderful, gold written all over them. I loved them. And because of having such a wonderful surgeon do my surgery, and I did the proper recovery and physical therapy afterwards, I haven't had any problems since, which I feel like most people after some kind of surgery from an injury like that, you usually end up having problems later on in life. And I mean, it's only been 5 years, so I mean, I guess I could see when I get older, but as of now, my hip feels better than normal, better than it did before, so that's nice. And then I ended up getting pregnant in 2019. So after Rio, it was kind of kind of a show, to be honest.
Of course, what was that like going into Tokyo, being a mother and competing as a mother?
So I actually didn't go to Tokyo just because I did in 2019. I had my last swim meet and I made the national team actually 2 or 3 months pregnant. So that was kind of cool to be able to do that. But then with COVID and everything and being a new mom, I decided to unfortunately stop training for swimming and things like that. So it was definitely a hard decision and hard watching Tokyo because I wished I could have been there, but also fun to support my teammates and other athletes from home.
What was the feeling like getting to put on two of your rings and having the U.S. and the Paralympic symbol on them?
It is awesome. Very, very special. I love them very much. I hardly wear them because I just love them so much. And then I'm like, no, I need to wear them more. I worked hard for those. I earned those. It's a nice reminder that hard work pays off. And if you have the determination and the dream set at hand, you can accomplish it.
How does it feel to have Paralympian and PLY behind your last name?
That's a new one. I just started kind of getting into that. So it's cool. It's definitely a new thing and definitely an accomplishment, but sometimes it also does feel kind of weird. I don't know. I'm still kind of getting used to it. Sometimes I forget that, I did that and I went there and competed and did all those things. So it's very cool and sometimes makes me uncomfortable. Actually, a lot of the times it makes me uncomfortable.
What was it like getting to compete against some of your teammates like Jessica Long, Courtney Truitt, and Hannah Aspen?
It was awesome. Courtney's actually one of my best friends. I just went and saw her and her son a couple weeks ago. So thanks to swimming, I still have her and a few others in my life, and that is awesome. And the nice thing about the Paralympic is I only had to compete against S11s. So I never actually had to compete against Jess or Courtney or anything like that. But me and Courtney did have similar times, so we would kind of compete in that way because our times were very similar. And so if we would go to non-Paralympic meets and just regular Can-Am meets is what they call them, we would kind of race in that way. So that was fun. But I did like that I only had to race against S11s. I would say that's one of the cool advantages, I guess, maybe, as opposed to the Olympic team, because everybody on the Olympic team is kind of racing unless they do different events. But like in Paralympics, it's only 11s against 11s. So if you're not an 11, I don't have to race you. So it's kind of cool in that sense.
Of course, what has it been like, obviously, getting to meet your fans and having them ask for your autographs and photos with you?
It's definitely weird. I've only ever met people like that at like events. Like when I lived in Colorado Springs, we would do stuff with Alpamar, I think is how you say it. I'm probably saying it wrong. I can't remember. But they would host different events and we would do autographs and signings and stuff like that. But I've never like just had somebody come up to me on the streets, which is good because that would probably make me, I don't know what I would do. That would be weird. I think maybe that's happened like once or twice, but yeah, it still is really cool. It's like, wow, they want my autograph? Like that's crazy. I'm just a girl. So yeah, it's definitely exciting and weird. I'm one of those, like, I'll definitely get read and like, oh, are you sure you want my autograph? But it is still cool.
What are some of your future plans in the sport of para swimming?
So I think I'm done with para swimming. I haven't really swam in probably like 2 or 3 years since I had my daughter, I think. Since I've had my daughter. So I don't see myself going back in that, but I have kind of started to get involved with blind soccer and I really like that. I'm really excited for that upcoming sport in USA, and they just named the men's national team a couple weeks ago and they still don't have a women's team. So I'm kind of excited for that change of pace and seeing that sport evolve. And
how's that been like transitioning from competing to getting into other things outside of the sport like motherhood?
In ways, it's been helpful, but it's also been a very difficult challenge, especially since I didn't really get to leave the sport the way that I wanted to. It was kind of more of an abrupt, sudden thing. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I'll get back to it. And then COVID happened. And then I was like, oh, I really don't have time to go to a pool and find somebody to watch my daughter and drive me to the pool, and there's really no swim teams where I live now. And so it was definitely very, very difficult transition. You kind of feel out of place. You kind of like feel like you lose your point in life because you spend all this time like training and performing and achieving and setting goals. And yes, life is like that as well, and motherhood is like that as well, but it's also very different. And especially being a mother, I don't get to work out as much as I used to or even would like. And so that is kind of, hard. Learning to love your new non-athletic body especially after having a child, is very difficult. And learning how to kind of not have any resentment towards the sport, or learn to love to work out again, and kind of just change that avenue of your life is very difficult. But swimming definitely prepares you in ways for motherhood, learning how to be structured and how to set goals and what I want to teach my daughter and values and stuff. And yeah, so it's good and bad.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to get into adaptive sports and in particularly para swim?
So some advice I think would be very helpful to find. It's sometimes hard depending on where you live and what you have access to, but it can sometimes be hard to find a adaptive team that is willing to work with your disability and the accommodation we'll need to then train you in the proper way. For example, like being blind, I can't just go to any team. I need a coach who will be willing to show me the technique in a non-visual way. So I need a coach who's understanding, knows how to kind of teach or ask questions to help a blind person, how to show me with his body or her body, how to move my arms, different drills that can help a blind person as opposed to a sighted person. The challenges that come with swimming blind, you don't swim straight. You can't see the clock, so you need somebody to help you with that. Finding the walls, you'll need either sprinklers set up to help you or somebody who's willing to tap you on the head with the tappers. So there's kind of a lot of work that goes into it. And I think now that Paralympics has been a little bit more broadcasted and more people know about it, it's becoming more prevalent in areas that it wasn't before. But I think it still is a challenge, and there's still a lot of growth that needs to be done. So I think if there's a sport that you like and that you want to do it and you have a disability, that doesn't mean you can't do the sport. You just have to find somebody who's willing to help you, and somebody who's willing to, if maybe they can't help you in the area, maybe they can have, now that Zoom is a thing, maybe, there's all these different ways. If there's a will, there's a way to find something for you to do that is accessible. You just have to be able to advocate for yourself, be able to fight for what you want, and that might be difficult. It might take a while to find somebody that can properly help you, but I think as long as you stay focused with the goal at hand and do your own research, I think you should be able to find something, and maybe even reaching out to other Paralympic athletes, and they can help guide you and tell you what they did and what worked for them. And, along the way, you kind of learn as you go too. Like there's things that worked for me in the beginning of my swim career, or so I thought, and come to find out they didn't actually work. My technique wasn't good. So we had to try a different strategy and all of those things. So yeah, I think just having an open mind and a will, in a way, it can be done.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to compete in the Paralympics for the first time or multiple times like you have?
Just to remember to enjoy the little things and to not be so worried about performance. And that way you got to enjoy the journey as well, because when you look back at those memories, yes, the medals and times and things are important, but they're not the most important. You're going to remember the chocolate that you got in Germany at Stuttgart. You're going to remember the laughs that you shared with one of your best friends, how we would always be hugging in a picture and nobody else would. You're going to remember all of those things. So I think to not make it all about you, to kind of take the pressure off of you, because at the end of the day, it's not about the destination. It's about what you do and how you learn along the way. So I think it's really, really, really important to just enjoy as you go, to learn, to not be so hard on yourself, but to also believe in yourself, because if you don't, nobody will. And it is a challenging world atmosphere to be involved in. So you got to have that belief in yourself, or you're just going to get eaten alive.
What advice would you give those Paralympians and even Olympians that are looking to go through the retirement process?
Definitely need to be surrounded with loved ones or people that support you, and you need to be aware that it is a very challenging time, especially depending on the circumstances. So I think you got to be patient with yourself, give yourself some grace, because it's not going to be easy at first. And learning this new life and using the resources that you do have, like the ACE, I forget what it stands for, but they have different workshops and things for athletes to do for retirement and things like that. And I never used those, and I'm not sure if they would have worked for me, because obviously they don't work for everybody. But I think just knowing the resources that you do have available, because they might help you, and most importantly, therapy and having an after plan of what you want to do. I think the most important thing that I did is I did have a degree and stuff. So I knew that swimming wasn't going to be forever. So I knew that it eventually was going to come to an end. So having that kind of plan in place, and not necessarily a concrete plan, because it's not going to go the way that you think all the time. So definitely being flexible, because I know as an athlete, we get so structured and so scheduled, and so okay, you do this time and this time in the pool, and you're gonna go this time in your race, type of thing. And life after sport isn't really quite like that. So definitely knowing and understanding that, and not being afraid to reach out to people that can support you through that process.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media?
You can find me Letticia with 2 T's Martinez on Facebook. Instagram, I'm Letticia _ all day. And Twitter, but something happened to my Twitter and I'm trying to get back in, but that one's just at TICIA _ Martinez.
Thank you again, Letticia Martinez, for your interview, and best of luck in your future in your life after Paralympics.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate talking with you and sharing my story.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Letticia Martinez, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.